hip hop, like you said, it's more interested in saying, what things are like, and in many cases is really provocative and often shocking. When NWA released "F the Police," like most black people were kind of like, yeah,
Yeah.
like, this is kind of like it, like this is kind of like my experience. And of course, white people and white law enforcement were flabbergasted. They were flummoxed. They could not believe anyone had ever made such a record. And the FBI went so far as to send NWA a letter,
Hmm.
sent NWA a letter saying how they did not appreciate this piece of art. I remember at the time they were saying this was the first time that the I don't know if they said the federal government or the FBI had taken a position on a piece of art. But it was an incredible act then and now. Of course, less so now because we have a we have a government run by clowns,
Yeah.
headed by a clown and run by clowns. I'm talking about Trump and all his selectees.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, these are the kinds of situations where the goals of hip hop kind of run smack into the goals of the larger culture. They really say it. Like, in other words, all the things you find in hip hop, you're going to find all throughout American culture.
I think it's the most honest genre of music.
The most honest, and you might say the most prophetic. And I don't mean prophetic in the sense of the future. I could mean that, but when I'm saying it, I mean prophetic in terms of speaking clearly. Like you say, honest. Yeah, yeah. Like it's all there.
It's all encompassing. It's
It has
touched on
no
every topic.
Hip hop has no interest in flattering.
Hmm.
Like flattering, like certainly America. Like that whole Lee Greenwood thing. I'm proud to be an American. That record would never come out of hip hop. It just it's just like the antithesis of hip hop. Hip hop, and I'm not even saying that there aren't hip hop artists or black people who aren't proud to be Americans. I'm not even saying that. I'm just saying that the entire construct. Like I remember years ago, I think it was Time magazine did a special issue on the Bill of Rights, where they illustrated all of the rights, that Americans have with photographs. They had photographs, and then of course there was the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, and they showed this beautiful photo of this family, father, the wife, daughter, son, against what looked like a green pasture and mountains. That's the way I remember it. And they all had like shotguns, and these weren't killers. These were families. This was a family that, believed in the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms. And I was looking at this picture and then it just hit me. I said, what if this family was black?
Be looked at as a radical group.
They'd be looked at as a radical group and would not have made it into the magazine.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have put such a picture in the magazine. Although such a picture, and that was before even the question of what if they were Muslims and visibly Middle Eastern.
Mm.
Like, like for some reason, maybe because Time or whatever magazine it was, I think it was Time, they pushed the levers of the qualities of this picture so far that it provoked a counter example in my mind. It was so white, so American that I said, wait a minute. Like the most American thing would be to show the people you consider to be the lowest in your society embracing this right.
Mm.
but that would not be palatable. Much the same way that Time always had Man of the Year award, which they still give.
Yeah.
They give it to the person who affected the news the most in any given year. Now, in 2001, they gave it to Rudy Giuliani. Why? Because they could not give it to Osama bin Laden. They just could not. That would not have been palatable. He would have been the obvious choice.
Yeah, that's so crazy. Think about it.
Much the same way that Hitler was given Man of the Year decades before.
I
But
didn't
they
know that.
go through Time's Man of the Year.
Wow.
Hitler is on one of them, but what they did is they put a cross through his face, like a red cross. Like he's a bad guy. In this case, they didn't even have the courage to do that. They just gave it to Rudy Giuliani, who clearly was not the person who'd affected the news the most in that year. If you just think about it, just
Yeah.
think about what happened in that year, you'd have to give it to Osama bin Laden. But that was unpalatable politically.
You couldn't do that. Definitely not. Because I
Not,
mean, you're,
wasn't gonna happen.
you're talking about that time. I mean, 2001. I remember when 9/11 happened, and that was around the time. And then even when you talking about the song "Proud to Be an American," that was a song that was pushed onto us heavily when I was in third grade because I felt like they were trying to make us super patriotic after 9/11. So, um, yeah, I just remembering that time. There's no, but I also remember how Rudy Giuliani was portrayed, even as a kid. I remember Rudy Giuliani being portrayed as the hero and the savior, America's mayor. That's what they were. That's what they were portrayed
Absolutely,
as. So
that
they had to
was
with him.
then. And not to people like me who lived in New York. He wasn't America's mayor. The people who lived and dealt with him did not see him that way.
Mhm.
But the people who didn't have to have him for a mayor, who had seen his image after 9/11, could see him that way. Thankfully, he lived long enough to show himself to be what he really was.
Mhm.
But my point is just that this is the political containment. This is the political effigy that has to be produced for America. And hip hop, like you said, it's more interested in saying, what things are like. And in many cases is really provocative and often shocking. When NWA released F the Police, like most black people were kind of like, yeah,
Yeah.
like, this is kind of like it. Like this is kind of like my experience. And of course, white people and white law enforcement were flabbergasted. They were flummoxed. They could not believe anyone had ever made such a record. And the FBI went so far as to send NWA a letter,
Mhm.
send NWA a letter saying how they did not appreciate this piece of art. I remember at the time they were saying this was the first time that the I don't know if they said the federal government or the FBI had taken a position on a piece of art. It was an incredible act then and now. Of course, less so now because we have a we have a government run by clowns,
Yeah.
headed by a clown and run by clowns. I'm talking about Trump and all his selectees.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, these are the kinds of situations where the goals of hip hop kind of run smack into the goals of the larger culture.
Yeah. Everything is connected. You have a background as a journalist, like we spoke about earlier. You wrote for The Village Voice, Essence, Spin, Vibe, and many others. But before that, you were Public Enemy's publicist as well as doing crisis PR for Rockstar Games.
It,
Uh,
it, those not before that, but it was woven between
okay.
those. That Yeah, I wrote while also doing these other things at various times.
Yeah, man. It's great jobs to have, man. Um, what's the difference
Very
between?
interesting.
Hmm?
Very interesting. I
Yeah.
mean, when I look at my my career, I had to, send someone a bio recently, so I just kind of rewrote it to look at it. It might have been the one that was given to you, I'm not sure, but I just looked at it and I said, it's not like a lot of like we read like a lot of scholars' careers. It's just like a progression of like the thing that they did and just more of it. And mine just goes all over the place.
Hmm.
And I so what? It doesn't look like a scholar's typical bio. But on the other hand, it marks the life I've lived is one pursuing my interests, and those interests I like to think are wide, and it's very interesting. It's been a very interesting career. I'll say that much, and it
Yeah.
continues to be.
Yeah. And in in the media, sometimes the pay is inconsistent. So you really just gotta, like you said, just pursue your interest, and pursue as many as possible.
Oh,
Because
yeah, I would certainly say that. I would certainly say, if you're working in journalism, certainly you're. It's a good thing if you can get other kinds of things happening while you're doing that. Some people have the careers where they can work, I don't know, 32 years for the New York Times,
yeah.
and that's it. And that's a certain kind of success. And then others don't have that kind of career, and they have to do other kinds of things to, you know, get the bills paid, so to speak. And so that's a different kind of success, I guess.
Hmm. But with all those different career paths, um, PR and then journalism, you really have to, I think now you have to make a clear designation between what's the difference between PR and journalism, right? Because now a lot of artists kind of use media personalities like their propaganda wing, um,
Yeah.
where they'll just only reach out to one personality, and he'll be the one relaying all their information, all that artist information, of course, and it's curated and it's never anything that could possibly hold them accountable or paint them in a way that's negative, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, during the time I was working as director of enemy relations for Public Enemy,
mhm.
um, my objective was to uh I guess I'd say tell the story of the band in a way that was interesting and to get their viewpoint out. Um uh we were using a fax machine to get information out. This was long before um this was long before anyone was using the web. That only came about in the mid 90s. And so we had a good 7 or so years before that happened, where we had to find ways to let people know about us that went around, if you will, uh, Columbia Records kind of corporate machine.
Yeah.
Columbia Records had a kind of corporate machine that wanted to talk about Public Enemy in a certain way, and we, as political animals, kind of wanted to talk about ourselves in a slightly different way, or even a greatly different way. And so we had to find ways to get around it.
So what I want to ask was, what do you think is the difference between PR and journalism?
Oh, um, well, PR is the act of entering journalism, of getting inside of journalism with a particular product or service or event, um, cooperating with the journalistic process in order to get that covered. That's how I see PR. And journalism is is the act of talking about the culture, human culture, generally in a fact-based way. With PR, your concern is less about facts
Yeah.
than they are about coverage. Your success is when you're widely covered, and whether what you're saying is true or not or factual is not of interest. What you're more interested in is coherence to your story.
Hmm.
If if the person you're doing PR for um, got divorced because they beat their wife, that they beat their wife is not the thing that you want to get covered. Not even the fact that they're divorced is the thing you want covered. What you may want covered is the fact that they're on the market again, or they're seeing an Austrian tennis star. These are related to the fact that they're divorced or beat their wives, but that's not what you want covered. While
Yeah,
if you're a journalist, you may want to cover all of those things.
yeah,
So PR is something that connects to journalism. For it's like it's viral.
yeah.
PR is a viral thing. It's a virus. While journalism is an organism.
Mm. Yeah, I've never heard it described like that, but I think
Can't be either.
that's necessary. Thank you for that. But I think that's necessary for the people out there because I think that the lines have been blurred a lot, especially.
Absolutely. But that's in the interest. That's in the interest, I think, uh, of both entities, kind of the mal interest, you might say, because for a journalist, you kind of want your story to go viral, but that may not be in line with journalism. And with PR, you want your stories to seem journalistic. You want them to have journalistic credibility, even if it's nonsense. So it's likely that they would start to, smear and cohabitate and look alike, which is confusing to people, especially in an age now, like now, where there are multitudinous ways to get a story.
Mhm.
Like when PE started, you waited for the news, to circulate the next day. You waited for a newspaper to
Yeah.
come the next day, and your PR and Sony clipped articles out of newspapers,
Yeah.
physically clipped them. You know, um, I don't even know how they keep abreast of everything. There are services that just do searches, I guess, of all this stuff, and there are all kinds of ways that you're reaching people. When you do this as well.
We're all just kind of just like aggregating at this point,
Right,
just taking stuff and re-
right.
republishing it and uh and also you got to like scour the internet for stuff like that, but it's definitely a little easier to find information these days. It is the information age.
Also, the the speed at which stories update has gone way up,
Yeah.
way up. Things aggregate minute by minute now.
Hmm.
As,
Hmm.
things update minute by minute as opposed to, like, daily, and then you might have a thing later in the day as a development, and then the next thing is tomorrow.
Yeah.
Now it's like, what did they say in the last 30 minutes? What did they say in the last 5 minutes, depending on the story?
Yeah. Yeah, I want to get back into Harbinger now. You created it in 2020 with DJ Rob Swift, which is a turntablist septet. That's seven for people out there. Experimental hip hop research project designed to investigate, like I said earlier, turntable polyphony, polyrhythm, and polysemantics. There are three other elements of hip hop, outside of DJing. It's rapping, there's there's graffiti writing, and there's breaking. Why create this for turntablism?
Great question. And the answer is that was the thing I was most interested in. That was the I guess you might say the aspect of the culture that I was most interested in, and about which I'd had this question the longest. A question of, like, why there weren't such things.
Mhm.
Um, I'd had that question for decades at that point. Like, couldn't we? Why don't we see? Why don't we see turntable ensembles or orchestras? It seemed to me an entirely reasonable thing, given the way DJs work and create. And you'd seen Scratch Pickles, and of course Executioners, and a couple of others. But you hadn't really seen anyone do anything really like large in terms of turntables. Um, and I wanted to do something large. It was just where my interest lay, and I'm a big believer in following your interests.
Hmm. No, it looks like it definitely based on your career. You definitely follow your interests. Definitely
Yeah,
you
I
got
try.
yeah.
I haven't as much as I'd like. I mean, there are lots of things I'm interested in that I haven't yet made or produced. And I think a large part of the time that I've been working, I haven't been as willing to make things happen as I am now or as I will be. Like I'm far more now when I want to pursue something, I pursue it. And there
Mhm.
was a time in my life when I was more, if I wanted to pursue it, I would just write about it. I would just write, not write articles about it, but just write like what it would look like. I'd toss things endlessly, like on paper, make notes of, but not execute. And now I'm far more likely to execute. So even with whatever I've been able to get done, it isn't as full as I would have liked it to have been, or as I hope it will be, over the next several years.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to whatever your pursuit is. Now that I'm aware of everything that you've been doing for the past few months when I did research for this interview.
I should say one more thing, at least. Um, I've now finished my second fellowship at Harvard, and I'm blessed and thankful to God that this fall I'll be getting another fellowship at MIT.
Wow, congrats.
Thank you. And I'm going to be an MLK visiting scholar or professor there and working on a project called the Hip Hop Deep Space Mission Monument. And the objective of this project is to create a hip hop, I guess the best way to put it is a hip hop musical time capsule or arc. At present, the goal is to create a list of 50 to 100 of the most transcendent recordings. I guess you would say these would be the hip hop records that best define the culture
Hmm.
and that best summarize it. Or, as I like to say, these are the records that, if by any chance the world were to come to an end, if we kept and preserved these records, we could start the culture over again. And the goal is to collect these records, um, put them into um, a capsule of some kind,
Yeah.
launch them, sending them deep into space, into, in fact, extrasolar space. The goal is to have them leave our solar system and the grasp of our sun, um, and send them, I guess, ultimately into galactic orbit, um, where they would, then, proceed for the next several million years.
That's interesting. Looking forward to that. And I'm
Yeah.
sure
Cool.
MIT is gonna be they're super happy to have you. Um
Yes, I hope so. What I'm working. What I proposed was I the to become an MLK fellow, you have to be nominated. And I reached out to a professor, Dr. Brian Wardle, asking him to nominate my project. And the project I proposed to him was that we work on creating a a recordable substance that would not desiccate in space. You couldn't just put vinyl records into space because they would dry out and crumble over time. They would just turn to dust ultimately. So if you're saying we need something that will be a recordable substance, or something that would hold a recordable waveform or audio signal, analog signal, for millions of years, it's going to have to be something else. So the goal is working with MIT's Department of Mechanical Engineering to come up with such a substance. And he was really game, thought it'd be really fun to work on this. And so he nominated me, and I'm thankful that I was accepted. And that's what we're going to be doing. I'm going to continue to be working with Harbinger, of course,
Yeah.
but this is a present project that's I'm going to be doing over the at least the next year, starting this fall.
Okay. Nah, so yeah, look forward to that. And what I mean, how will people be able to consume that in any way? Like where can they find
Wow,
your work?
that's a great question. I guess the best way to reach out to me is still via Twitter. Even though I don't tweet as frequently, it's still a good way to reach me at Harry Allen on Twitter. Um, that's probably the best way right now. Um, I don't have any publicly facing websites or anything like that, but I hope to change that soon enough.
Yeah. Yeah, man, you got to get on your self-promotion game. I know that's not really your thing, like you said, but
Yeah.
it's the way of the world now.
Oh, it's long been the way of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
What is we're talking about all these prestigious universities, MIT, Harvard, and hip hop. What is the value of bringing hip hop to academia?
Well, I think academia is really just another set of viewpoints. That's what it is. It's another set of viewpoints, organized by certain kinds of standards of investigation and study. And again, what it says is that hip hop can bear this kind of regard. It's not a simple or a silly thing. It's something that can withstand study and that is elastic. Hip hop can be thought of in multiple ways, in ways that you might not think about it, or ways you might not study it outside of academia. The academic concerns are of a different nature than are the concerns on the block or the concerns in typical common culture. They're not better concerns. They're just different, a different set of standards. And hip hop is not going to be regarded this way outside of academia. So academia is just another set of questions
Mm-hmm.
with often interesting answers.
Mm-hmm.
And it academia serves that purpose from my perspective. I the project I'm doing here, for example, asking, is there a recordable substance out of which we could make basically records that would last for millions of years in the vacuum of space? That's a question. Outside of academia, that question just gets a puzzled look. It doesn't get any kind of response. I can't think of people outside of academia to ask that question.
Mm-hmm.
Ask that question, I could ask it of industry. I could go to Lockheed, but Lockheed probably wouldn't take a call from me seriously. Or they could say, yeah, we could do it, but it's going to cost you several $1,000,000 for us to investigate this. Academia is kind of like a back door because the people who go to Lockheed come from academia.
Yeah.
So it's a it's a way to get the benefit of new questions, new knowledge, and to do research and look at hip hop through new eyes.
Yeah, definitely new eyes. New eyes are always good. Uh,
Yeah, yeah,
experience
exactly.
always good.
Yeah, new viewpoints, different questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like you said, exactly. Different questions for sure.
Some of the same questions, but asked maybe a slightly different way or
Yeah.
for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
No, I don't know if Lupe Fiasco is still at MIT.
my understanding is that he has finished his fellowship there. I think he did 2 years at the MLK, the same program into which I'm going, and he's going to continue there. I think maybe part time, while also teaching at John Hopkins in Maryland part
Mm,
time. So he's
mm,
going to be bouncing between the two schools. I understand.
mm. Yeah, that's beautiful, man. That's
It is. It's very interesting, actually.
it's one of my favorite rappers of all time. So and just I always recognize his intelligence, his genius. So for that to manifest in something outside of hip hop is just great to see.
Yeah, and I believe that there are at least a few, maybe one or two of his sessions on the web, and certainly interviews with him or conversations with him on the web as well, connected to his work at MIT. For people who want to look at that.
Mhm. In your words, you started Harbinger to combine the exuberant, typically solo performances of hip hop battle DJs. In this case, the seven of them to understand what such fusions demand, so that we may build even larger turntablist combos. What is the importance of making the combo of DJs even larger? What does the quantity of DJs mean to the Harbinger's message? I do want to add, I know that you said that you want to kind of replicate like a big band. But is there anything else that you are trying to accomplish?
Well, when I say this in my colloquium, when I approached MIT about this project, what I wanted to do was septentectet,
Yeah,
which is uh, the
17.
17 turntablists. I wanted to replicate. I wanted to do, I guess, if I say a turntablist big band, and that didn't mean I wanted to have somebody play kettle drums and somebody do a piano and somebody do a sax, but I wanted 17 channels of sound, at least 17, up to 34, depending on how many turntables were actually on deck. No pun intended. And it was just really one alluding back to those foundations of black music, uh, of the jazz big band, and that as an experimental factory for sound. Um, but I also wanted to do something really, really audacious, because I had no idea what was possible at all. Um, Turntablists typically do work solo. They don't typically even work in duos, let alone ensembles, let alone septets, let alone septentectets. So I was really interested in all the things that go off the scale or that go out of control when you put many that many turntablists in one space.
Mhm.
I just wanted to see what's possible. And people at MIT, to their credit, they were nonplussed. They said, "We get it. What we suggest you do though is start with a smaller group and then iterate it. Like
Mhm.
you develop, like you can then add more people." And I thought I was going to get to do my 17 turntablist band, but surprisingly, I wasn't put off by their suggestion. I thought it was a good one. And I said yes almost immediately. Pretty much, we didn't go back and forth on it at all. It's just like, okay, that makes sense. I guess I understand that. And if it works, that'll be support for doing a bigger ensemble. Um, so it's really just that this was my first vision of it. My first vision, the first question I had many, many years ago was, why aren't there turntable orchestras? And I was just using orchestra as like a metaphor for groups of musicians that build complex sounds by the control over many many parts.
Yeah.
That's what I was really talking about, as opposed to a specific number. And
Wait, so if you're creating an orchestra, then who's the conductor?
we'll see. These are all questions that come into play.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you have a big band who's the conductor, like, or if you have a septet who's the conductor, like, do you need one? Or is there another process, or do you just need a conductor? It's not really clear. It we Harbinger had a really good start, and then the pandemic came, and now my job is to rescue us from everything that kind of slowed us down at that point. So there's still a lot of questions. If anyone looks at my colloquium, I hope you'll link it to this.
Yes.
I'll send you the link that I prefer to use.
Okay.
If anyone looks at that, there's a period after I present where I'm asked a lot of questions, and a lot of them I just say I don't know. I give my thoughts about what I think the answer is, but I can't say I know because this is still a research project,
Hmm.
still something that's ongoing, and we haven't even scratched the scratch on the surface. So questions like that are good ones. Like, how do you organize the relationship between in time between all the performers when it's a big ensemble? Do you need a, a conductor at that point, or is
Yeah.
it organized by some other means? I just don't know. I haven't had the opportunity to try different things yet.
Yeah. Well, intelligent people admit when they don't know something, right? So I think it's commendable for you to admit that you aren't fully aware of everything, especially like you said, it's a research project. So, research, science, everything is subject to change. It's always so many different variables that come into play. Um,
Yeah, I think that's healthy, and I appreciate you saying that. I think it certainly when I was doing the colloquium, I started to feel funny because I kept answering every question. I don't know. We haven't gotten that far in this process. It's not something I've been doing for decades at this point. This is something I did for a few days that got cut off. We did a few things, and then that got cut off, and then now we're still working. I went to Harvard this past year to work on developing but resource and other kinds of support for Harbinger to push it forward. That's something that's still ongoing. So it's still a exciting project that's in a bit of limbo, um, but that I'm committed to seeing through. Since we started working again, we've come up with and some of them we talk about in the colloquium, some really interesting ideas and approaches for the use of the turntables that I really want to explore. But it's really all connected to um, a lot of it's connected overwhelmingly to fundraising, and um, that's a thing I'm still learning how to do.
yeah, yeah. That goes back to the self promotion part, right? Fundraising.
In part, yeah, it really does. It really does. If you're really comfortable with that, like promoting yourself, like I think a lot of the fundraising stuff is simple, and I think part of what I'm learning, I've been working with some really talented people, um, like Sandy McKinley, who is a great consultant based in the Boston area, um, who's really been talking to me a lot about how to think about my story and how to, I guess you might say, uh, talk uh, in terms of a narrative for what we're doing.
Mhm.
That's really connected to fundraising. She's been a really great advisor. I mentioned Sandy in my colloquium because she was there in attendance as well. Um, Makiba McCreary is another great help who's come to advise and support um, what I'm doing. And uh, she's asked me, I don't know when people are going to see this, but she's asked me to be part of a panel that she's doing in late July, July 27th at Martha's Vineyard, organized around what she calls disruptors. She asked me to be on a panel of people she considers to be disruptors to talk about our work and our ideas. I'm looking forward to that. Um, and this is support that all came out of being at Harvard. Um, so even though the work is ongoing and is not finished, I've gotten great help, and there are other kind of Tim Hall at Berkeley is another person who's come to support what I'm doing. A great guy, really intuitive, really smart, really connected. And these are all people I wouldn't have met if I hadn't gone to Harvard. So that work continues. And of course, as a fellow there, although I'm not going to be on site, we're still able to use Harvard resources as fellows for up to a year after we leave, which is a great benefit and will enable me to continue to do a lot of that work um, while I'm doing other work.
Yeah, no, it's all things to look forward to. Yeah, and this interview will come out next week, like you said.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Uh, there used
Maybe
to,
the people who see it will make their way to the vineyard.
yeah, that's definitely I hope so for sure. There, this is to me, Harbinger's almost seems like a tribute to DJing, to turntablism. Uh,
Certainly, oh, certainly that. I mean,
yeah,
as all DJing is a tribute to DJing. Just the fact of it, you know.
yeah, true.
I guess this I guess you might say celebrates it by reforming it or reformulating it or restaging it,
Hmm.
or making it more making a focus on it.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And
I
and
could certainly say that.
and that takes me to this question of just thinking about hip hop in its purest form. There was a time where the DJ was more popular than the MC, right? The DJ's name was always first in the group. Eric B and Rakim, right? It was
Grandmaster Flash and the Furious
Flash and the Furious Five, right? Uh,
gotten the three MCs.
exactly.
Mm.
So, you know, almost every rapper had a DJ in their group, and the DJ was also the producer. What would you attribute to that change, right? Because by like the Dr. Dre and the Bad Boy era, that kind of changed.
Well, it was changing in many ways. It's a great question. I talked about this you know um at MIT. I did a when I did my artist residency in 2020, where I put together Harbinger. Part of what I was also asked to do was to teach a short class. It was a class in 6 installments during their interstitial period, the period between the semesters. It's called IAP at MIT, and I talked about this um, this this weird thing that happened in hip hop, where the DJ founds hip hop, is the foundation of it. The MC grows to become the dominant face, and then the DJ is torn off and cast aside,
Hmm.
and then goes and becomes this kind of alternative instrumentalism that they call turntablism.
Hmm.
It's a very odd thing. It's a kind of unique thing, I think. I don't know that I've heard of any other musical form that develops this way. And and of course, DJing got supplanted by sampling, and that being a form of production, it laid the groundwork for it, the formal musicological groundwork, so that in hip hop production, at least to the degree that one is using samples, and by samples I mean the pre keyboards, if you will,
Yeah.
um, like chords and other kinds of keyboards. To the degree that it's sample based, it sounds like turntables. That's to say, it's reminiscent of it. It doesn't sound exactly like turntables, but the form, the form of the produced track in hip hop bears the impression of earlier turntablism. So it's like they got it to a certain place, and then they said, like, we don't need DJs anymore, because producers were coming from other places, and because of commercialism. What happened first was that when acts went touring, when they went doing shows, DJs became extraneous. Like if you want to see EPMD, you don't necessarily want to see DJ Kayla Boss. You don't really care who that is. He has a track on the album, but what you want to see are Eric and Parrish,
Yeah.
Eric and Parrish Sermon, Eric Sermon and Parrish Smith. And so, as opposed to, I guess you might say, a crude way of putting it is that as opposed to splitting the money three ways, you just simply get a track, an instrumental track
Yeah.
of your records, and you rap over them. And now you only have to split it two ways.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that started happening. And the nominative thing that you mentioned happened first. So even when you have acts called Run DMC or Houdini, they both had Jam Master J
Exactly.
and Grandmaster D in them. They still embraced the DJ, and the DJ was still an important and visible part.
He's always a member of the group.
Yes, even after they ceased to make him the basis or the leading edge of the crew nominatively.
Like Salt and Pepper with Spinderella as the DJ. Yeah.
Even though it's not Spinderella and Salt and Pepper or Spinderella and the Salt and Pepper MCs, even though it's not, Spinderella is still in the group.
Yeah.
And even after they had lost their first Spinderella, they found it necessary to get a second Spinderella. They had to have a Spinderella. It wasn't just and Spinderella was, an important part of the group for a significant time until I guess they had whatever separation that they had. But I would say it was commerce. It became DJs got replaced by DATs and other kinds of pre-recorded materials. It was economics. Um, there was that there was no need to pay a DJ if you could just work off sampled tracks. It was a change in the music. Like hip hop starts as a way of organizing organizing a party, organizing a function,
Mhm.
and then it's compactified into something that you do with records. When you hear the first hip hop records, the Rapper's Delight is 14 plus minutes long.
Yep.
I can remember going to the record store to buy 12-inch records because that's how I like to get them.
Hmm.
And if I was buying something and it was less than 7 minutes, I'd feel like I was getting cheated. Like I wanted a long record. I wanted to get the most bang for my buck, I guess you could say.
Now songs are less than 3 minutes.
Usually like two and a half or two,
Two
and that's to
verses.
maximize repeats on Spotify.
Hmm.
Paid for each repeat, so they want to squeeze in as many as possible. But obviously, a 14-minute record is utterly unworkable. But even that was a reduction because you know like when you talk to people like Chuck has said this, Chuck D said this, Grandmaster Flash said something similar. Like when they were first approached about rap records, they didn't get the concept because the way they thought about hip hop was as an event.
Mm.
So what would you make a record of? Like the party is the record, but that's a 3 hour event.
Yeah.
So what's the record of? Like it's amazing that this was not clear. It seems obvious now to us, but it was not clear to people who had completely different reference, a completely different reference. And so all of these shifts and changes over time, I think, ultimately, and of course, here's the other thing: as hip hop has less need for DJs are becoming more expressive. They're becoming more adventurous. They're having events like this DMC and ITF and other things that are testing the abilities of DJs. So DJs are becoming more experimental, more abstract, even you could say, in terms of their performances. At the same time, hip hop is becoming more commercial and more commercialized. It's it's almost like these were like two forces going in opposite directions. DJs becoming more expressive, more experimental, and hip hop becoming less so. And they were just ultimately ripped apart by people, by forces, and by their own inertial kind of like their own inertial propensities.
Yeah. Uh, it seems like, you know, uh, a lot of the
And that's something I didn't say in my MIT class. The last part about these two tendencies of commerciality versus experimentation, tearing them apart. That's something I've realized just now speaking to
oh, thank you for that. Thank you for that exclusive. But
you.
yeah, I guess that's just the progression of things, the natural progression of things with music and commerce, like we spoke about earlier. You know, labels wanting to cut corners, they don't want to pay the DJ as a member of the group. So you just reach out to different producers, and this is how you develop an album like Illmatic, which is like the first rap album with super producers instead of just one artist sitting down focusing with one producer.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Um, these changes work in all kinds of ways.
Mm-hmm.
They work in all kinds of ways. They have all kinds of effects.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them not all good ones, not all bad ones. I mean, when you have a bunch of like really gifted producers working the on an album for a really gifted vocalist, you're likely to get a really good effect. And in this case you did, you know. Um it was different than Nas having a DJ and that DJ overseeing all the tracks,
Yeah.
you know, or some of them. Or even maybe even Nas even DJing for Nas. I mean, what I was implying is that as DJs became more expressive, like maybe it's just harder for rappers to work with a more expressive DJ.
Mm.
Like Invisible Scratch Pickles are really creative turntablists, but they don't tend to work with MCs. And I don't know of any MCs or I haven't seen any MCs leaning towards working over mix master mic tracks. Like they're really outrageous, but they're so outrageous that I think most MCs would just consider themselves fighting the track if they were to like try and rap over that.
It's turned into something separate. It's turned into yeah,
That's exactly what I was saying. Yes, hip hop DJing went somewhere else and became something else,
yeah, yeah. Instead of it being something that's corresponding with
corresponding or tied into rhyme.
yep,
For better or for worse. In some ways worse and in some ways better.
yeah. Do you care if the message people get from, and maybe you answered this already in a different way, but the message people get from watching Harbinger is the same as the message you intended to come across, or is everything open for interpretation?
Oh, sure, everything's open for interpretation from my perspective.
Yeah,
There might be things that we want people to get or see or understand, but what's far more wondrous, of course, are the thoughts in anybody else's head,
yeah,
because those things have those are real and they have a basis, and typically a basis that you can't anticipate. When you make something and you do it with conviction and some truth, people come back and say all kinds of things to you,
hmm
and that's interesting. I'm definitely one of the people who like. the last part of the art is the person consuming it. That's um, people have always my favorite film of all time is 2001: A Space Odyssey, and people on the web like have videos about what it really means and what I've never watched any of them because it's just utterly uninteresting to me. Like
Yeah.
it means, and Kubrick himself said that the in so many words that the viewer of the film finishes the film,
Mhm.
and it's it's to me it's completely clear and I totally get it and it's satisfying. It's not a film I walk away from and say I don't get it. What was that about? And there are films that I do have that reaction to, but that might be satisfying as well to like not get it. That can be satisfying also to want to look at it again or figure it out or see what other people think. But so yeah, I mean with Harbinger, there's certain things I'd want to get across, but it's far more interesting to me when you talk to people who've seen what you do and they say, it made me think of this and something I never thought of. When we did our when I did my artist residency, uh it was 10 days. We put the band together, we put some pieces together, we rehearsed them and we performed them. And I remember when we started to play, there was we were shaped. We had the way the band was shaped was like an upside down U. Like when you look at it from above, it would be like an upside down U.
Mhm.
There were, I think, a couple of members in front, and then on either side, there were members as well. So it kind of formed that shape, and the crowd was in the middle of that. And when we started to play, people took their cameras out and started filming by rotating in place. People were just rotating around in a circle, recording the band as they did that. And people were doing that in counter circles to each other. What we saw were a lot of camera lights and phone cameras as people were rotating in place. It was something I did not expect. I did not expect to see that sight at all.
Yeah.
It's probably the thing of the performance that it's certainly the thing I remember the most, and that was the most astounding to me, because it was like almost a form of performance that the audience came back to us with that I just did not anticipate. If I had sat and thought it through, maybe I would have said, well, people might start recording and then they might turn the lights on their phones and they might start recording in circles. But I just didn't think about it. And then I saw it happen, and like a spontaneous organism, that's what the crowd did. And it was beautiful. It was actually beautiful because it was so surprising, so necessary, and so unexpected. I like that.
Yeah.
I, I love it if we would be graced with people who would give what we do that kind of attention and then come back with something that we're just not anticipating.
Yeah. So my last question for you is a question that I ask all my guests. This podcast is named Words Matter Pod. And you're a person who has made a living from words and telling stories. You've garnered much acclaim and prestige because of these words. So, my question to you is, why do words matter to you?
Because God made them that way. The story of the way the world begins is God speaks and reality becomes real. And in the Bible, it says, in the beginning was the Word. And that's a term from Greek, logos, which is John's term for describing Christ, the, the power of the mind made active, I guess you might say, in motion, in force. And it's a really strange thing. Speech is a really strange thing when you really think about it. Most people don't really concretely think about it because it's so common. Um, but it's such a if we didn't have speech, we wouldn't come up with it. We wouldn't believe it. We wouldn't believe such a thing. We wouldn't believe that that we could make things, ideas, and realities by making these sounds. Because when you think about it, what connection do these sounds have to do with anything?
Yeah.
What connection do, if I say train or locomotive, what connection do those sounds have to do with with an actual locomotive?
Mhm.
It's purely abstract, and it's something that we can concretize because of the way our minds work out and are organized.
Yeah.
It's an utterly amazing thing. It's an utterly amazing thing
Yeah.
that we have words, and that God set up the universe to be responsive. That you could say words to somebody and make them cry, make them angry, make them hopeful. You can make them believe.
Yeah.
You can make them worship.
Words is really the start of everything. It's the foundation.
Oh goodness!
Everything you in.
Think of how long parents wait for a baby's first words.
Yeah.
Their first words. They're waiting for them to utter words, to make those sounds.
Before you even wait for them to talk, really.
Yes, yes. Just give me something. Give me dada. Like it's the way that it shows that the child shows that my mind is working.
Mm.
It's working the way it's supposed to work. Just to make those two sound dada.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, thank you, Mr. Harry Allen, for sitting down with me. I know it's been finally got your number, got in contact with you, but
Yeah,
wanted
I'm glad it could make it happen. I know this is something that we've been working on even during the time of the fellowship, and it was difficult for all kinds of reasons. But I'm glad that it was still of interest of you to speak to me, and that we finally did get to speak.
yeah, no, thank you so much for your insight and your thoughtfulness with your answers and your wealth of knowledge and your contributions to hip hop culture and journalism. And for people like me who are young journalists who look at the work that you've done and try to create our own identity, but try to carry some things and your integrity, try to carry that with us along the way. So yeah, once again, man, thank you.
Very kind of you to say. Thanks very much.
All right. And everybody, like, subscribe, comment, and words matter. And I'll put the link for the colloquium.
Yes, colloquium. That's what it's called.
I'll put the link for that in
The word I had to learn to coming to Harvard. I'd not heard or used the word before, but that it's just simply the when you're a fellow in the Hutchins Center at Harvard, you have two duties. You have to give a colloquium, which is a presentation of your research. You're basically telling your fellows and those who attend what you're working on and what you're doing. And you have to attend all the other presentations of your fellows. Those are the two requirements. And aside from that, your time is your own.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, so I'll put the link for that colloquium and the link for this episode on YouTube and on the audio platforms as well. That's Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So yeah, words matter. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right.